Hello, welcome to the All Saints podcast. My name is Bill Berger. Really glad you're with us. A couple of things before we get rolling here. Please make sure to check our website, believedoubtseek.org. We've updated some things and got some information on there for you to look at. Our app is ready. We are organizing a few more things. We'll probably be launching it this week, so we'll be looking for an email from us letting us know when you can download it. Really excited about that. Also, check out our Convoy of Hope information. We are joining Convoy of Hope for One Day to Feed the World campaign, and you can see that on our website and in our newsletter. Again, thanks for being with us. We are in Acts chapter 16, and last Wednesday we gave part 1, and apologize for a little late getting this podcast out. Normally we would like to have it out in the morning, but I had a couple little technical difficulties and got them all organized, and now we're ready to go. So a quick reminder, if you haven't listened to last week, please do. But just a really short overview. We're taking a look at how the message of Jesus, the gospel, really extends beyond our private lives and permeates the world through tangible actions, through the way we live it. It necessitates a reordering of our lives. It influences how we allocate our resources, manage our time, structure our daily routines, and actively engage in promoting justice and compassion for the poor. And we're looking at 3 case studies within this text. And last week we looked at a woman named Lydia, who was a businesswoman, very successful. She came to cross the line of faith by being with friends and gathering and listening to the apostles and being part of a Bible study. Then we looked at this slave girl who was possessed by evil spirits, and she needed people to come to her aid and defend her and bring her to a place where she could be healed. Well, our last case study is the jailer who was guarding Paul and Silas while they were imprisoned in Rome. And we're going to take a look at him briefly, and then we've got 3 lessons or 3 applications that we can learn from this text. And so let's get to the jailer. And in verse 25 of chapter 16, we get just the background of what's going on here with this jailer. He was most likely an ex-Roman soldier. These guys usually got government jobs upon their military retirement. So he was probably a very hard man, probably a bit brutal, being the guy that's, in charge of the prison. He probably didn't have much mercy or compassion. So in this text, we learn that Paul and Silas were beaten to an inch of their life and thrown into this prison. So again, the jailer, this guy isn't as broken as the slave girl, nor is he put together as this businesswoman Lydia. He doesn't need money. He's not an intellect. And he doesn't need the power encounter that the slave girl got. This is a very earthy, practical guy. He, tells dirty jokes, drinks hard, cynical. He's probably seen it all, probably killed some people in battle. But in this encounter with the good news of Jesus, he gets a very practical encounter of how Jesus can change your life. And so if you can imagine this scene, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns together to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And verse 26, and suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. So imagine that. The Paul and Silas now are liberated. They can leave the prison if they want, like all the other prisoners. And, this is probably very terrifying for those that, are looking on and listening. Paul and Silas understand that they are already free. They're liberated with the freedom that comes by serving Jesus. And so the love and joy of Jesus are causing them to sing. They don't see themselves as victims. They are free men as they understand the message of Jesus and how it's changed their life. So it's nighttime. This earthquake happens. Gates are open. Bonds are dropped off all the prisoners. And one thing to keep in mind, that if these prisoners escaped under the watch of the jailer, he was most likely executed, killed. So the jailer now is nervous, and he knows this, and he's getting ready to take his own life. And Paul yells out, "Hey man, we're still here." So right away, you get this deep understanding of how Paul's life's so impacted. Now, Paul knew all the rules. Paul knew how this worked. Paul probably put people in these very same prisons when he was a Pharisee. But he yells out, "We're still here." Why did he do that? Well, the jailer knows that Paul sacrificed his freedom to save his life. And nobody ever did anything that radical for that jailer. He only knows evil for evil, an eye for an eye. Now he sees these guys full of joy, free men, not physically, but free in their understanding that they don't need to make sure somebody else gets the same treatment they did as far as an eye for an eye goes. These men showing compassion and love on this man. And so he responds to this love. And they told him all about the one who was beaten and killed for him so he too could be free. So what happens? Well, in verse 32, they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house, and he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought him up to his house and set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. So this man who knew no mercy became merciful and kind. He bowed his head, accepted Jesus. Just Lydia, the businesswoman, needed a rational encounter. The slave girl needed a power encounter. And this jailer needed to see the practical work of Jesus. So, out of these three cases, what do we learn here? What kind of application can we make? Well, I think there's three things that we can learn from these three individuals. Number one, the gospel, the message of Jesus, is for everybody. Lydia, slave girl, jailer. Classes are all different. The way that their lives were and how they were shaped and formed are all different. And Christianity is not limited to one people group. Most Christians in the world are Asian, African, and Latin American. There is no one person or one group of people who can say Christianity is not for me. So don't look around and say about anybody, they aren't Christian material. A miracle can happen to anybody. Even people that we know that are staunch atheists or staunch agnostic or don't want anything to do with religion. The power of the good news of Jesus Christ can permeate any soul. And I think, well, I'll speak for myself. I forget that. I forget that sometimes. Sometimes I'm very judgmental in how I see people and view people and listen to people. And, this just brings me back to realizing God can do anything and anyone. Number two, the gospel message of Jesus is the unifying power for the world. And don't we need that? Look at these three people and think about what they would be doing if they lived in your town today. Maybe Lydia would be a CEO of her own company, living on, High Street in her city. The slave girl would be a 16-year-old drug addict, runaway, living on, the rough streets of your town or city. And the jailer might be a blue-collar cop, living in a ghetto. So we have all these different cases of people, and all three of them had an encounter with the way that they needed to encounter Jesus. So these people probably would never cross paths, and if they did, they wouldn't have anything in common. But here's what the gospel did for all three of them. Although they were worlds apart, the same gospel changed them and brought them to the same community. In fact, in verse 40, I love this part, and it's a part in this text that often we don't bring up. But look where they all ended up. Verse 40, so they all went out of the prison and visited Lydia, and when they had seen the brothers, they encouraged them and departed. So now all these people who come from different places are gathered in Lydia's house having Bible study and fellowship. It's interesting how we really want to pride ourselves on diversity, but it's interesting how a lot of these groups really just don't get along. They stay apart. The gospel of Jesus is a unifier. It crosses all barriers, and as Christ followers, we don't view people as class or race or status. That is not part of the way in which we see the world. So as a Christ follower first, everything else is second. The unity of the human race will be found in one man, Jesus Christ, and it changes our attitude toward people on the other side of those barriers completely and utterly. Okay, the gospel's for everybody. It's the unifying power of the world. And finally, God is going to work through you and me, even though we are broken and wrecked. I don't know what to say to people. I don't want to talk to people about this. I don't know the answers. I need to get my act together. I need to pray more, know the Bible, change some of my attitudes and behaviors. Well, go ahead and try and figure it out, right? That's a very common thing for all of us. And probably we can try our hardest to get it all figured out and worked up, but we'll never get close. How did Lydia become a believer? She opened her heart to Jesus. How did the slave girl become a believer? Paul was annoyed with the girl and angered by her, quote, noise. So why would Paul allow this to be written? Because it's the gospel and Paul is flawed. We see how Paul was annoyed. And yet that's the thing that God used to get his attention to pray and love this little girl. We're all flawed. We all make mistakes, say dumb things. I know I do. You can ask my wife. But God's the one who goes after people, and he uses us anyway. And he can and he will use you. So, what's the name of the person God's asking you to pray with and pray for? So I hope that you found some encouragement here, something to just really move you to a place of the necessity of prayer for people, prayer for the world, that we would be people who are, in spite of ourselves, letting God work through us, realizing the power of the gospel to unify the world, and finally, just not seeing anybody through any lens, but understanding that the gospel's for everybody. So I hope this is something that you can use, pass on to somebody else perhaps. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me pray. Jesus, thank you so much for the unifying power, for the wonder-working power, for the mercy and grace of the good news of who you are. The God that people that we come in contact with would see whose we are, that we'd be people of your words, be loving, kind, unifying, tender, forgiving, at times, Lord, angry at injustice. But Lord, I just pray that who you are and the power that comes from you would be evident to all. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, thanks for being with us. Please check out our website, believe.seek.org, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, or maybe you haven't checked your email. We sent a newsletter out last Friday. Please check it out. Let us know what you think of our site, and be ready for an announcement of when we can download our app. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.